Hi guys, so last time we looked at the really heavily requested Mamamoo, and now my comment section is absolutely filled with Pentagon, Pentagon, Pentagon. So you'll be happy to know guys, we are finally looking at Pentagon. Let's go. Okay, so before I say anything else on Pentagon, I want to say thank you very much guys for getting me to 1k subscribers. This isn't a series I ever thought would really take off hugely, I just kind of did it for fun, but you guys seem to really value it and seem to get something out of me ranking people in groups. So thank you so much for that, and there'll be many more groups coming along. Okay, so Pentagon, for what seems to be a really underrated vocal group, like people know of them and know that they have incredible vocals, particularly with their two main singers, who I'm excited to talk about because they're particularly good. But all the way through, their voices are really strong and really solid, and they're a really fun, catchy pop group with some really interesting songs. So yeah, let's delve right into Pentagon and see what makes them so good. Okay, so once again, somebody's got to fill the last position, and Yuto is really here because, again, of lack of evidence. Can't really find any clips of him singing at all anywhere. There's a couple, so I've kind of got a small basis, but he's last kind of by default again.
Boom shakalaka, boom shakalaka.
Okay, so one thing I want to mention in K-pop generally is obviously all the songs are written with a tenor focus. Most of the songs are in a really high key and the tenors do all the big parts, all the interesting vocal parts. That being said, a lot of the baritones tend to get put into these rapper positions because they don't have the voices to really cope with this. As far as I'm aware, Yuto had about 9 weeks of training or something before he was put into Pentagon, and I don't think he's had a chance to really learn much about singing or showcase his voice in a particular way other than rapping. His rap tone is very deep. He has a very deep, full voice. He has one of the deeper rap tones I've actually heard. But because of that, he can't sing in tenor keys, and that's pretty evident. The only times I've really heard him sing, he kind of stays exactly where his chest range naturally is, only puts it up a little bit higher and a little bit louder. That's quite indicative of people who don't have much singing training. They just kind of put their voice where it's comfortable, just above it with a little bit of melody and tune. That being said, he can captivate a little bit of tune. It's not incredible. He's never showcased anything in the way of variety with his voice. He's never kind of went up into a belt or using any sort of mixed voice. He's shouted occasionally into his head voice. Because his voice is so deep and so full, it has absolutely no freedom up there whatsoever. And you can tell that he's never really trained with his head voice in any sort of way. So I don't know if he's a good singer. I haven't really heard enough of him. But from the evidence I have, he's just a really deep voiced guy who suits rapping incredibly well and can't really get out of that really thick chest configuration. Now I could be wrong with more evidence, but from what I could find, he isn't a singer, hasn't really showcased much in the way of vocals. And does he have potential? I'm not fully sure. He's just a really deep voiced guy with a really thick, full sound. Okay, so next is the main rapper, Woo-Sook. Now his voice is really weird and he does really strange things with it, but I'm excited to kind of delve into it. But yeah, let's have a look.
Talk to me, talk to me. 아주 오래전부터 너를 또 많이 좋아할 것 같아 왜 대체 바라보기에 넌 날 미치게 해 원이
Okay, so I could find a little bit more of him singing than Yuto, and his voice kind of does exactly the same thing. He has a bit of a thicker voice again, he's a baritone, so he isn't put in these tenor keys. He sings a little bit more than Yuto, however. What he tends to do is he stays in his chest range, again, just above it and just a little bit louder, with a little bit more melody. However, I have heard him shout into more of a mix occasionally. It's not like a really high mix or a really big mix or anything, it's quite a full pulled chest sound, but he's lengthening his chords ever so slightly. He's getting to these slightly bigger parts. As I say, they're more shouted on pitch and there's not like a huge amount of melody to them. It's classic, I'm a rapper, I'm shouting to do a big part kind of vocals. But that's an avenue to his voice that he does have. He can change his tone and he can change his pitch. Yes, it's not incredible, the technique isn't going to blow you away, but he has an avenue to his voice that Yuto does not. That's why I put him a little bit higher. As well as that, he's kind of famous for having a really, really high extension to his voice. Now, it's not like hugely usable or anything, it's kind of, he does staccato soprano parts like and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know why, as a rapper with a really thick voice, he has that particular avenue to his voice, but he does, and I guess if he trained it, he could kind of use it. So to me, Woo Sok has good pitch ability. He has the knowledge to get into different areas of his voice, just he doesn't really utilise them fully or with any sort of technical proficiency. So yeah, he's a baritone who can shout on pitch pretty well, doesn't really mix a lot, but can kind of pull his chest voice up a little bit, and he can go into a really high head voice for reasons I don't fully understand. So yeah, Woo Sok, he has potential to be a good singer should he ever want to, and he's got a really thick full instrument, but he doesn't really need to sing the vocal parts because the rest of the guys coming up can do that for him. Okay, so now we have the two rappers out of the way. Shinwon is the weakest actual vocalist. His voice has a lot of potential and he does some interesting things with it, but let's have a delve into what makes his voice the way it
솔직하게 그녀의 집 두드리시오 말을 못해 깎이 죽은 노래 같다 It seems to me that when I die these words will be written When the plane's coming down like lightning
Okay, so Shinwon was put into the sub-vocalist role, and I can understand why. His voice hasn't got a huge amount to it. It's not massively versatile or varied or particularly strong. He has an okay voice though. Firstly, the main pro of his voice is he can capture emotion really well. When he jumps into that higher chest voice, he can really navigate areas that make him sound like he's like struggling or crying, or he can just captivate a feeling really well, I feel like. Unfortunately, technically, he's not brilliant. He tends to bring his voice a little bit further back. So when he's in his lows, it's kind of okay. It sounds a little bit muffled to a point, but it has that thicker, richer tone that a lot of the guys maybe don't have. He can sing in keys that sound kind of comfortable, and in his low ranges, he sounds okay. He seems to struggle kind of finding the pitch a little bit. He can often sing a bit flat. Again, that's because he pulls his tongue back a little bit, which makes the whole space harder to navigate. It doesn't give you as much to work with, so it kind of limits the vocals that you can actually produce. So when he goes up, he's shouting rather than mixing, because he doesn't really have much in the way of chord closure for his chest voice and much technical proficiency when he mixes up there. So as I say, when he shouts and gets to that emotional ballad area, it is more of a chest pull and more of a shout. So technically that isn't hugely sustainable. He doesn't do it all that much. He does have a good voice. He can sing relatively well, and when he stays on pitch lower and breathier, he sounds nice and sounds relaxed and sounds pretty decent. But as I say, his voice doesn't have much in the way of versatility or agility or really much technical proficiency. It doesn't really get into his head voice hugely smoothly. He's got a nice falsetto that he can use and it's okay, but he doesn't really mix, doesn't really have much of a head dominant balance mix or anything like that, and he pulls chest. And then when he's in his lows, he sounds okay, it sounds relaxed, but there isn't really much to it other than kind of a breathier kind of relaxed-ish sound. So yeah, while he's an okay vocalist, he's never going to get really many of the hard parts, because that's just not what his voice is really there for. It's more to fill in gaps and for transitional parts in a kind of lower key. But yeah, Shinwon's voice is nice. It could be a lot better, but technically it isn't fantastic. Okay, so Yanan's another one that kind of fills a more of a sub-vocalist role. To me, he's got kind of more to his voice and a more unique tone than Shinwon, and he's got a little bit more to it. But let's dive in and see what I think of his vocals. I gave you everything, baby, everything that you give, girl. Why? This is meant to be, yeah. Burning bright, the ways that I be holding on so
time. There's nothing in between.
Okay, so Yanan's kind of on the other end of the spectrum to Shinwon. While Shinwon's kind of lower and pulls his tongue back, Yanan places his voice really high and really far forward. So what I mean by that is he has this really bright, really youthful sound. His voice sounds really kind of high, and as I say, it's got a bright quality to it. It does kind of fall into his nose occasionally, so when he tries to add more of a robust sound to it, it can sound a little bit strained, like it's struggling a little bit, because it sounds much more comfortable when he's placing it more forward, a little bit higher, a little bit softer, and a little bit brighter. So as I say, when he's kind of pushing into a more robust sound, it doesn't sound like it's sustainable and like it's got much in the way of agility in that sort of area. So he doesn't really do that a whole lot. His voice isn't big, but it sounds piercing when it's in this higher place, and his tone's really quite pleasant actually. Like, I didn't think I really liked higher sitting nasal voices, and often I don't, that's pretty clear so far. But his voice has a really youthful, lovely quality to it, and I do really like the way it sounds. And in that area, it sounds proficient. It sounds like it's got a bit of space to go into. Sounds strong, sounds nice. When he places it here, it's reliable, it's really good. And it has kind of an area of his voice that a lot of people can't work in terms of a transitional part. He doesn't need to sing it hard or powerfully. It has a higher sitting area of his voice that sounds nice and relaxed. As I say, when he adds a little bit more to it and tries to sing in notes under where this particular placement works, it sounds less reliable, like it's a bit shaky, like it hasn't got many places to go into. He can't really belt very well because of this. His chords aren't very thick, so he doesn't have much in the way of oomph to his voice. He doesn't really mix hugely to get into any really hard vocal parts. So his voice works in 3 or 4 notes in this kind of mid to higher 4th octave place. It sounds nice, it sounds reliable, it sounds relaxed, and it sounds more consistent and easier time staying on pitch than Shinwon's does. It's why I place him above him. And his voice doesn't sound like technically it's being held back as much by a tongue position or anything like that. So yes, while his voice isn't very versatile, doesn't have many avenues to it, and can't get into a really high mix or a really low place, the place it is in is consistent, nice and relaxed and reliable, and I quite like the sound of it. And with more vocal training in terms of belting or mixing, he could be really good. Okay, so now's a bit of a jump in quality. Yeowon's voice is the first voice I'm looking at of all the vocalists to people who have a really good vocal position. He has an interesting voice that he uses in a very unique way, so let's dive into it.
I'll be gone, gone tonight. The grabbing in my feet is so wide. The way that I've been. 너 가고 싶은 곳으로 가자. 잘 모르고 가고 싶은 곳으로 가자. 고민은 잠시 내려두고서 내 사랑 어때서 내 지대니 유도다 그렇게도 쉽게 날 지나들겠지 사지지 않을 것만 같았던 날들이 눈물어져 난 무서워 우리 둘이 만들어가라 뭐네
Okay, so Yeowon's voice is kind of interesting to listen to because it's a little bit thicker and a little bit heavier, but he doesn't sing in a thick or heavy way like the rap line do. He tends to sing in a more kind of breathy, relaxed, slightly agile way. When he's in his lows, he sounds very comfortable. He hasn't got a huge grab of chest voice. It's light, but it's also got a bit of a depth to it, so it makes his voice have a unique lower quality. And when he sings in this lower place, he can kind of add a few little runs here and there. He sounds like he's got a little bit of agility, sounds really nice, really solid. The only issue is as he goes up into a mix, he kind of pulls chest voice and pulls the tongue back a tiny little bit, which means that it can sound like it hasn't got a huge amount to go into, and he hasn't got that really big tenor belt of the people coming up necessarily, and his voice sounds like above the middle of the 4th octave, it'll struggle a little bit more. He has a unique tone, however, as I say, in his low notes he sounds really good, really agile, really unique and really nice, and he sings in a way where everyone else doesn't really sing. It's nice, it's pleasant, and it's got a good consistent technique and can add a nice lighter quality should need to. He's got an okay falsetto again, and he can kind of move into a decent mix here and there, but it's a little bit chest pulley, as I say, and it's not hugely varied or versatile in where it can go up until. But in this lower or middle place where it's in his chest voice, sounds comfortable and sounds a bit agile, it sounds really nice, and he's got space to go into, and his voice is really unique, and he has a nice unique vocal delivery and sounds fantastic in more transitional lines. And yeah, he has a really solid voice, be it a little bit unversatile and not going to blow anyone away with anything like power vocals, but it's smooth, it's nice, and it's pleasant. Okay, so once again, like Yeowon, Kino's voice is kind of opposite and has a really light, lovely quality to it, and it's a really nice, unique voice. Let's delve in.
I am tired of this place. I hope people change. I see swimming pools, living rooms, and every place. I see your lips. 보고 싶다. 너의 사진을 보고 있어도 보고 싶다. 너는 작은 먼지처럼 작은 먼지처럼 날 이렇게 어쩌면 좋아.
Okay, so firstly, Kino's main vocal weakness is he doesn't really project at all. He doesn't really utilize his kind of thicker speaking voice. When he speaks, he has kind of a heavier, deeper tone, and he doesn't tend to stay really connected as he goes up. He doesn't really sound comfortable with anything like power vocals, but that isn't what he's there for. What Kino's voice does exceptionally well are two things. Firstly, his breath support and his breath control is beautiful, so he can transition from his lower chest range where he sounds light, but occasionally with a bit of a vocal fry onset, so he starts kind of some phrases like into kind of a deeper tone and then instantly into a bright, lovely sound. But that takes a lot of skill and breath support. And then as he goes up, he sings in a really kind of not breathy per se, but a kind of light area, and doesn't really utilize much in the way of grab. So he's using more air than anything else. But he sounds like he can do that technique all day, every day. It sounds really consistent. It sounds like it can phonate constantly and he's not going to run out of air. And if you sing in a really high light place, sometimes you can run out of air really quickly, but he sounds like he's got it. He tends to sing with a kind of light forward placement. Again, he doesn't really mix, so when he goes kind of bigger, it doesn't sound hugely comfortable or really have much avenues to get into really mixed big place. But he sings light and he sings in the kind of middle to fourth octave with a bright tone, a light tone, but it's really soft and really beautiful. And the way he sings in it, as I say, it's very agile, so he can go up and down it really easily. The transitions between all those registers are really solid, and it's a nice, unique, light tone that most people don't really sing in. Everyone in this group kind of sings a bit more full with more chord closure. So Kino's voice is a breath of fresh air when it comes on. It's softer, it's lighter, it's agile, and it just sounds gorgeous in every sort of area of his voice. Beautiful tonal quality. As I say, it just lacks the power vocals of the people coming up. But in terms of what he has, it's a really consistent instrument, a really nice transitional voice, and it's just a really light voice that kind of juxtaposes everything else in this group. It's really nice. Okay, so to me, Hongsuk has the strongest voice outside of the top two. He's got the most to it, the most varied voice, and the one with the most avenues to work into. So let's have a look at it.
Too young, too dumb to realize that I should have bought you flowers and held your hand. I should have gave you all my hours. 나도 울고 있어요. 난 보고 싶어 무엇인지 난 못났고 말 없는 걸 난 안경 쓴 샌님이니까 절대로 포기할 수 없어.
Okay, so as I say, Hongsuk's voice is the one that has the most versatility of everyone so far, in my opinion. Firstly, he sometimes stays in the lower chest range, as everyone else seems to do, but his kind of sounds like it has the easiest time staying on pitch, has the easiest time being either breathy or a little bit heavier, and because it has that ability to do both, he can bring it up into a mix. His mix, again, is either a bit heavier and chest pulley if that's the sound he's going for, but he also has a little bit of an extension to go into that sounds much more balanced, much more head dominant, and like it's got a place where it sounds comfortable. But his mixed voice always sounds big, so it's not incredibly balanced. But when he gets into there, he sounds like he's got a really good, consistent belt and sounds very comfortable. As I say, he has a really easy time staying on pitch here, and his voice all the way through has the most colours it can access of the people I've mentioned so far. It's got the kind of easiest time staying down lower and thicker and on pitch, but it also can easily kind of transition a little bit lighter and sound more pleasant and sweet, more idle singing style. Or he can go into this belt area, and his whole fourth octave sounds robust, it sounds big. It doesn't sound like it's got anywhere to go into super mega high until he goes into his head voice, which he does access occasionally. occasionally, which is quite high and quite pleasant, but it's nothing on the two guys coming up. His voice just sounds big. It sounds like it's got a nice big area to go into. It's always really open. He always opens his mouth really wide and he keeps a nice open full sound. And when he goes into that bigger mix, yes, he can make it more head dominant balanced and make it easier to navigate, but you can also keep it bigger and thicker. And he has probably the best belt outside of the top two, and he has the voice that has the most avenues outside of the top two, and it sounds really nice. So yeah, Hong Seok's voice is really strong, it's really varied, it's pretty agile, pretty nice, has good access to a lot of different colours, and works in a lot of different areas. So yeah, his voice is really strong, and in another group he could easily be a main vocalist, particularly if he practiced a little bit more in that upper mix, but the two guys coming up are borderline exceptional, so I'm really excited to talk about those guys now. Okay, so this may seem slightly controversial. Most people put Jinho first, but there is a bit of a debate online to see if he's first or second. Now, he has an unbelievably amazing voice and is a fantastic singer, but I think I've got a case for him being number two. Either way, let's just delve in and listen to his incredible vocals.
To you, it's like chasing the clouds.
Okay, so let's just talk about what people want me to talk about. Jinho's ultimate vocal strength is he has, I think of everybody I've heard, the best upper fifth octave mix of any idol singer I personally have heard before. What he tends to do is stay in a really strong head dominant mix. It's called a mask place head voice in some circles. It's the thing that goes, wah! It's like that really high, super mega high key. Basically, he makes it sound absolutely enormous. So basically what he's doing is he's keeping all the feeling in his head, but he's bringing some of his chest range from down low. And because he's quite a small guy and his instrument isn't super thick and super big, he can very easily bring that up, and his voice has a lot of agility and power in that area. It just sounds so free, so easy. His upper mix and his head voice is the best of any idol I've ever heard. It's incredible, it's enormous, sounds really big. He sounds like he's so comfortable in this fifth octave key, and that he has the best voice for ad-libs in this group. He's the one that gets all the really high extension parts, all the things in the background where it's wailing in the background. That's always Jinho. His voice sounds absolutely unbelievable in this area, and as I say, he has the best of this area I've ever heard, and his ad-lib potential is absolutely extraordinary. The only reason I put him second is when he's lower down in his voice in the fourth octave, yes, his mix is still beautiful, it's amazing, and yes, it can be very balanced, but what he tends to do is, because he's smaller and doesn't have that thick vocal cords, as he's bringing his voice up in the top end of the fourth octave and belting, he occasionally can add too much of a chest grab, and you can see him pulling away, and his neck has some veiny things going on because he's using too much pressure to try and get that extra volume. When he's singing normally, it's not soft, it's still pretty robust for someone of his size, but it's not a huge sound. He's having to try a little bit harder to beef it up. So it's more of an agile, versatile, flowy voice, and when it goes into that upper mix, it sounds really strong, really nice, but he is adding a little bit too much pressure occasionally to get into that really big sound, which is strange because he does have the ability to add a more smooth transitional mix occasionally, but he struggles to get into that place more. He seems to find it much easier to sing in these really high fifth octave places, and that's because he has a perfect technique when it comes to the mass place head voice, and he has the best time doing it of anyone I've ever actually heard. So I think he has amazing upper extensions, amazing ad-lib potential, and his voice is beautiful and really balanced and really strong. He just lacks that small area of his voice in the fourth octave that makes him absolute god tier, like the next guy in my opinion. But yeah, his voice is unbelievable, and if you put him first, I fully understand why, and yeah, that's fine. Okay, so to me, Hui has the perfect solo singer voice almost. I haven't come out of a research session being as impressed and in love with someone's voice as much as I am with Hui's, and I want to delve into what makes it so particularly good in 1 second, but let's just listen to him sing.
잡아놓고 나쁜 요 Shine a light Give it a shine a light 조금씩 이 거리 그 위로 그대를 보내야 했죠 Can we all just get along? Can we all just get along? Come a long way from where we began. About it when I see you again. When I see you again, baby. 같은 거 몰라. 네가 예쁜 걸 알아. 나를 맞추면 안 돼. 넌내 가슴 뛰게 가슴 치게.
Okay, yes, Jinho goes higher and more consistent. However, Hui also has that avenue to his voice. There's several times where he's showcased a high mixed voice or a high master player's head voice or a really high falsetto. Yes, he doesn't do it quite as often as Jinho, he doesn't get as many of the ad-libs, but that is an avenue to his voice that he does have. So I don't think that Jinho being able to do that makes him much better than Hui. Not at all, because Hui can kind of do a similar thing, just not as robust and as consistently. Okay, so the thing that makes Hui's voice so good is it's so balanced. All the way through his range, it sounds so comfortable and so polished and so fantastic. So when he sings pretty much every line, he has a sense of chest closure and chord closure and chest voice that is so much stronger than everybody else's. He sounds like his voice is super robust and super big, but that he's never at his top note, that he's never at top volume, and he's always got somewhere to go into. His voice is huge. When he's singing just casually in the fourth octave, be it low or higher, it's big. It's always got a chest pull. It's always got this enormous, robust, open, massive sound, and it's not being held back by any sort of negative technique, be it tongue tension or placement or anything like that. His placement is open, forward, and really beautiful. He can also bring it up into this mix. As I say, Jinho's got a mix, but it can be too much of a pulled chest voice. Now, while Hui does that on occasion, he also has the ability to lighten his tone really freely and really easily and hit really high, really powerful belts. He does it all the time, and he does it in a very, very balanced way. It's almost 50% chest voice, 50% mixed voice, because it's so big and robust, but also so light and so agile. His voice has that avenue down the best in this group, in my opinion, and one of the best of any idol singer I've actually really heard. I think Hui's voice is exceptional, and yes, it's got the ad-lib potential at Jinho, but Jinho's slightly better at doing that. But in terms of the fourth octave, his all-round ability, his all-round tone, his all-round robust chest sound, he has a bigger, more consistent, more versatile, fantastic, amazing voice, in my personal opinion, and I really wish I'd heard it more, because I think his voice all the way through is incredible and fantastically polished. Okay, so I love Hui, I love Jinho, I really, really enjoyed the whole of Pentagon, thank you very much for requesting them. Okay, so next time we're going to be looking at Monster X, and you guys have told me to do that with Wonho, so that's what we'll do. Hope you look forward to that, but for now, goodbye.